Be advised, the opinions and views of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
Hello, good evening. Welcome once again to another episode of Illuminati with Trix and Crip. Trix being the lovely lady that I provide.
Hi everyone.
I provide eye candy for. I mean,
Yes.
I do it, and
Very
she
true, very
provides
true.
the desk.
We're like
and,
Conan O'Brien and Andy. I want to be Conan though because I worship
Actually, we
him.
haven't been doing much of taping recently.
No, we have not.
Because this young lady here is so busy.
We've been.
She's
He's
so
been
much
busy.
in demand.
I
She's
will
so
not
much in
allow you to
demand.
get away with blaming me for it. He was in Kuala Lumpur. He was in Dumaguete. As you can see, the glowing tan, which I envy you for.
I wish I were in Miami, though, so I can root for my team, you know, and we can come from behind.
Or in Germany.
The sweet way, the sweet way. Germany is doing so well, huh? And our guest has a special privilege card to all these football games of the Euro Cup. We will introduce him now. Okay.
Now, do the honors.
Special guest. I believe it's the first time we're having someone represent the art of photography in the show. As you know, Illuminati has always focused on culture and
Matters
the
of
arts.
culture and
We've
the
had
arts.
dancers, stripteasers, artists, visual artists, writers. But I
Voodoo
believe it's the first time
witches.
that we're featuring a Filipino photographer.
That's right.
Top class, too. You know, it's about time.
Yes.
So do the honors.
We have had actually a photographer a few weeks
Not
back.
from here?
That was the daughter of Pandy
Yes,
Aguiaro.
yes.
Though
but
she was just starting out and can't
right.
exactly
And there were two
be-
guests. And this
Yes.
time...
This time we're focusing particularly on the subject matter of photojournalism and photography.
photojournalism and the side career that it has spawned. in any case, without much further ado, my good friend Ben
We
Razon.
present you with Mr. Ben
Razon.
Razon. Thank
Good
you
to
for
be here.
joining us,
A
Ben.
byword in Philippine photography and bars. You know.
Bars in Malate.
Bars in Malate.
Yep. How are you guys?
Hello, Ben.
I'm good.
Okay.
Thanks for inviting me.
First off, I'd like to hear from you. Sana, you can assure us that it's entirely false that you've absolutely retired from photography for your new career.
I pretty much hung up the cameras actually, because especially for commercial purposes, because I didn't really. I guess when I hit 50 about 2 years ago, I decided, yeah, maybe let the younger kids go out and play. Time for me to just stay put in one place and just hang out.
Time for you to take over,
At a
the
point.
younger kids.
Yeah, the younger kids. Kaya nga, ano eh, I've been at it for 20, close to 30 years now.
30 years.
Wow.
And this all started in the United States where you grew up,
Yes,
right?
my parents brought us to the States back in the early 70s, and that was where I finished high school, and that was when I found that I had something for photography. So I decided to starting shooting for school events, sports. And then I decided I wanted to take it further, just study it formally, and then try to see what I could do with it as far as
Yes.
as
So
a
you
working
did have
life.
formal training, a
Yes,
formal training background
I
in
went
photography.
I went on to study at the Art Institute of Pittsburgh, which is
Yeah.
Wow.
that they offer
Yeah.
courses in commercial art and also in multimedia photography.
But you grew up in and you had your high school in West Virginia, right?
Yeah, it was down a little bit.
Which explains the song.
Oh,
West
yeah.
Virginia.
Back
country
then at
mama.
that time it was pretty it's a pretty remote place actually. Not a lot of Filipinos get get planted in
True, yes.
a part of America that's not it's not really fit for
And of
it's
course,
not
picking-
inhabited by immigrants,
Yeah, yeah, that's
Asian
right.
immigrants especially.
Was it a mining town?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the industry there is coal mining.
Coal
And
mining, just like Pennsylvania, because it's a neighboring
Pennsylvania,
state, right? Oh,
Kentucky,
that's
West
right,
Virginia.
That's right.
And the reason why my father ended up there was because he was a doctor and he wanted to do his own private practice in
I see.
West Virginia. Before, yeah, this was after he had studied or taught medicine at FEU back in Manila.
Was he a lung specialist, Ben?
He was a
What
just
kind of a doctor?
just general practitioner.
General practice. I would imagine that most of the health problems there would be related to the lungs.
Yeah,
Not because of
it's-
smoking, but
yeah,
because of
but because of
the
coal,
coal mine.
coal
Yeah,
mining,
the coal mine.
which is
That's true, yeah.
there's a condition there that my father really took special attention to, which is everybody who he became he attended to had black lung, which
Yeah.
is every coal miner's disease.
that's
you know,
right.
which is you ingest that fine that
I think it's
coal
called
dust.
pneumono ultramicroscopic silicovolcanoconiosis. The longest word in the English
Seriously?
dictionary. All
Yeah.
of
Can you say that
45
again?
letters. Pneumono ultramicroscopic silicovolcanoconiosis. That is
And
the
I was
disease.
proud when I learned the word Pachycephalosaurus when I had a dinosaur collection as a kid. That
Talo
one's
pa
like
yan ng
3 times as long.
intercontinentalizationalism. Or in any case, you picked up the cameras because
Yeah.
it's one way to get to the gym where the girls are
Yeah,
practicing with their
it was nice
bonbons.
because
and,
you could shoot the sports, you can shoot the cheerleaders and
Yeah.
everybody. This is really nice.
That's right.
But,
that's right.
you know,
They give you permission to do so.
of course, because I was the official school photographer, so and you contributed for the yearbook and doing all kinds of things like portraits and activities, school activities, and but then I wanted to head back to the big city, which was Pittsburgh, and I wanted to study the craft, being at that time it was a very, very technical thing.
What were your first cameras, Ben? I'm curious.
It was a hand-me-down from my dad. It was a half-frame Olympus pen,
Okay.
which he picked
Go
up.
Olympus.
Yeah, it was. He picked it up in the early '60s in Japan. Actually, it was half-frame, meaning out of 135 millimeter frame, it splits the picture in half, so you get instead of 36 exposures, you get 72 exposures. So it was a good practice. So film was black and white. It was cheap then.
Yes, yes.
And you could get to experiment with a lot of angles and just shoot whatever you want, not really wasting film.
And you used the school darkroom, I suppose, or did you have your own
yeah,
that
yeah.
early?
Because when I was I got into chemistry class back in high school, the same teacher who was teaching chemistry was also teaching photography, and I was attracted to photography because of the technical nature of it. I wanted to see what was so magic about it. You put a sheet of paper in a solution, and
that's magic.
something comes up, and
When you
that's
see the
magic,
image
yes.
coming
yeah,
out.
that's what a lot of photographers
They
really
do
fall
some
in love with.
dodging.
Yes,
Oh,
my
yeah.
dad actually had,
yeah.
had a dark.
So did I.
Yeah.
In the usual venue, the bathroom.
Yeah,
Diba?
you set up
You-
a
you
bathroom.
convert
It might
your
have been the
bathroom
and
and
I
you
was
could-
just too young
yeah,
to
temporary
You put the
bath-
red light and
Exactly, the safe light, temporary dark room.
and I love the smell of the chemicals.
Of course.
Yeah, and you had a lot more control over your photos.
Yeah, and you tend to
I
do
would've
this.
Magic.
You tend to do this at night, actually,
Yes,
when there's no daylight.
Yeah, you don't have to cover it with a
Exactly.
black cloth. Ganyan, ganyan. In any case, eventually after your degree course
In Pittsburgh.
photography,
Yeah.
you moved to New York. Right?
Yeah, I
To
went.
Big Apple.
I decided to go to New York City and try my luck at being an apprentice at some of the studios there. Some of the studio photographers. They were mostly commercial photographers. So, but at that time, you had people like Richard Avedon, Art Kane, all these big guys who were still the kings of Madison Avenue as far as advertising and editorial work, shooting for Esquire, Bazaar, all these great legendary photo magazines that, whether it was fashion or whether it was editorial, And it was just really, really exciting.
Ansel Adams was still in his prime
Yeah,
by then.
well,
no?
but Ansel Adams was more West Coast.
West Coast,
A lot of the
landscapes,
East Coast photographers were the people I was influenced by.
Okay.
And I loved their work because they
So mainly portraits and urban landscapes or something.
urban
like
landscapes, editorial, portraiture. You know, sometimes it wasn't even commercial. They would just get these interesting assignments to shoot personalities, people like Andy Warhol and all these artists who were coming up and coming. The late 60s and early 70s or mid 70s was a good time. But I came there, I went to New York City around the early 80s.
Okay.
And that was it was still going pretty strong at that time, the commercial. You worked in the photo district. I finally got work with a photographer who was servicing ads for pharmaceutical companies and also advertising agencies. It was really a lot of schlepping around. You have to set things up. Everything was on your part to do. Set up the lights, set up the seamless. Buy lunch for his clients. Go out to the deli. Be an errand boy, pretty much. There was nothing really.
Well, what made you decide to come home, to come back? Was it the EDSA revolution, or did you come before EDSA?
It was. I came before. I
so
went.
you brought it about.
Yeah, I brought it about. Well, no, it was just after about a year working in New York, I decided. I had already figured out pretty much whether I wanted to stay there or not, but Manila being my home city, you were born here. You have to, you have ties to that. You have ties to your home city and your home country, of course, and that's why. And my father and my parents at that time didn't understand why I was wanting to go home, because I wanted to do photography here. Because why? The logic being, why can't you just be a photographer here in the United States? It's much easier to start a career in the States. But I didn't want to be a portrait photographer for a dime store or J.C. Penney or Sears photographer. That wasn't my. I was interested in doing a lot of documentary and photojournalistic work,
which you got to do here,
which I
especially in
got to do
those
here.
interesting times.
And because
the
it was
80s,
the last years of Marcos at that time. I remember
at this point, I think let's try and scroll down some of the shots that you've taken. Some from the U.S., right?
Right.
And
Some
some
from
from
the States.
here. Yeah, if you can have this, you can annotate this, Ben. What is this?
Yeah, but this was back already at the time when I was shooting already full time for the Philippine Daily Globe. This was the 1989 coup. This was somewhere in Libis where nothing, the way it looks like today,
that was a coup.
existed like that, right? And there's I had documented the departure of the Americans at Subic and Clark, and
91.
right after the eruption of Mount Pinatubo.
What is this?
This was an early picture of just going around the city, Manila, Luneta. They would always have these evangelical crusades, and some of the faces were interesting, and you could actually go straight up to them and just photograph them without being bothered. But
Oh, and you're familiar with this character.
and this was, of course,
Sir Joseph.
Sir Joseph in his home.
Box Street, was that Box Street?
It's like somewhere in Green Hills,
Yeah.
And just a variety of things, because the one thing that's nice about photographing here is that.
Now this is in the U.S.
This was in the States.
Yeah.
That was,
You were in Staten? Was that in Staten?
That's from an angle of the Statue of Liberty from New Jersey.
From
actually,
across
from
the-
Libertyport, New
I see.
Jersey.
So this is a long teleshot.
Yeah, it's like a long shot.
I
which
thought you were behind a couple of columns on Staten.
Yeah, and it was like the trees were in the foreground, and it kind of created a nice pattern there. That was this is a more recent shot of I was there for the inauguration of Barack Obama. And that was an exciting time. Of course, and there's.
And then
No,
you were
when he
also
was
there
still a
for the
congressman.
inauguration of Obama's buddy,
Right.
smoking buddy.
Yeah. This was Paloma Picasso when she was visiting Manila. Just typical newspaper assignments that you get every once in a while. It's interesting. This was the shot of the Pentagon after 9/11. Just
Weren't you sorry you weren't there during 9/11? This guy looks like a victim of 9/11.
Yeah, that's a familiar face. that was the shot of Pepe at the old location of the Ore House pub,
Our house, which we will get to.
which we'll get to later.
Yes.
And of course, that's
Pinatubo, yeah.
Pinatubo back in the late 90s when it was still fairly nice to look at. And there's a shot of us doing black and white nighttime pictures. That's Pittsburgh, actually,
Okay.
at night. They call it Steel Town, which is used to be, the industry was
What
steel.
a range of photography subjects you have.
I know.
This is an orchestra,
Yeah,
right?
this is the Pittsburgh
so
Symphony.
This is performance.
Yeah, I went backstage at Heinz Hall, and I got to be buddies with the backstage hand, and he allowed me to actually hang out backstage, which is pretty neat. Just documenting a lot of, photographing a lot
What's
of
this?
interesting people. That's one of those. That's the streetcar rail tracks in Pittsburgh. It's just being all steel and
It's like a painting.
Very
It's a
graphic.
very nice black and
geometrical.
white shot. Okay. This was again in Washington, Pentagon, after the plane decided to,
Hit the Pentagon.
yeah. Here's back in Manila. This is back in Quiapo during the late 80s. This was in New York City back when I was. I would try to get as much photography done on my own when I would get some time off from apprenticeship work, and then just wander the streets and just shoot. Which is. This was at the Lincoln Memorial where the inauguration was. And this is a recent picture of
Nice.
a son and a father and son at UST Hospital.
Okay.
This was back in an old picture back in Pittsburgh in '78 when I was still studying black and white. And the nice thing is that they really drill you in the technical details, and you begin to learn how to love the process because it wasn't the way it is now, that it's just push a button and
Push a button
you have
and
a
then
picture,
leave it to
right.
Photoshop later
right.
on.
Yeah.
Leave it to just the camera. Even camera thinks for you already. It doesn't. Just push the button and it's automatic. But back then you had to have an entire plan.
Did you usually mount exhibits at the time, or hardly ever?
Before, yes, in the early part of my work, because I would get invited to join group exhibits in the States, and as well as here when I settled here already. But it's one thing to be eventually known as a photographer who exhibits mostly his work, and then there's another thing to also be just a photojournalist or a newspaper photographer, what they call just shooting for the day and just meeting the deadlines and doing all that, which also trains you. It gives you a lot of discipline, because you have to produce a picture at the end of the day, no matter what. It's not just about
You have an assignment,
Yeah.
and
gotta
sometimes, most
come
of
up
the
with a
time,
picture.
it requires a physical effort.
Oh, yeah.
Because like you're being elbowed by 20 other photographers.
Of
right?
course, and especially when there's nothing happening. That's the
Yeah,
challenge
bad news
in
day.
newspaper photography. You got to come up with a picture, whether there's something
Create.
happening or not.
That's right.
And that's kind of what focuses you on what the photograph should be for the day. If newspaper work is a great training ground for photographers, because I've seen a lot of newspaper photographers start out as daily, on the beat people, and then they end up in advertising later on in life. They become more well known, which I wanted to do more editorial, more magazine work. I didn't necessarily want to go into commercial advertising stuff, because that's a different line of field of competition altogether.
But that's the thing with photography, it's also what makes it fascinating. On the other hand, most people think of photographers as parang almost a dime a dozen. Everybody
course.
can say, especially in the Philippines,
course.
everybody's a photographer. with
Everyone
his,
has a camera.
everyone has a camera in
Right.
his cell phone, right?
Especially
But
now.
photography
The
itself,
Leicas,
whether
the
it's
Canons.
Philippine or global,
Yeah.
it's such a range for an art field then.
Yes.
Right? You have the glamour photography, you
Yeah,
have
exactly.
Yeah,
the
you have your
photojournalist, you
fashion
have the art
photography.
photographer.
Yeah.
Yes, because what people don't really realize is that once you start shooting or following something in photography, you just have to pretty much try to blaze your own trail because you just follow what interests you.
No.
I don't always recommend or give suggestions to people as to what direction they should go because that's the first thing they teach you when you start to learn the technical side of it, is that we teach you the technical side so that you can then decide what kind of thing you want to specialize in.
Yeah.
As far as later on,
Yeah,
you want to be a fine
Where
art
you want to
photographer,
apply
you
your
want to be
look and your-
you want to be doing reportage, you want to be doing portraiture or whatever. You know.
And because of all this also, there's also the matter of socialization, no? Among photographers
Oh, yeah.
especially.
Yeah.
Photographers, I find, are among all artists, they probably collectively have the highest EQ. You know, among artist friends I know,
Yeah,
more
they're-
than writers, dancers, painters. You know,
Yes.
mataas ang EQ ng photographer. Why? Because usually they frequent a pub.
Yeah.
That's why.
Well, that's
Which we
get
will
into
get
in the
into in the
second
second half.
that's another story.
Because Ben found a home in Malate.
That's right.
Yes.
More than a decade ago. No?
Yeah, more than
two
two
ago.
decades ago.
The original Ore House pub.
Yep.
And on A. Mabini, along that famous road that was started out by
Hobbit House.
Indios Bravos
Yeah.
first.
Yep.
And
Hobbit
then
House.
the gallery where Ben Cab first exhibited,
Yes.
Indigo.
Yeah, Indigo.
And then it became Hobbit House.
Yeah.
There was Remembrances ba? Or
Yeah, Remembrances.
Remembrances. And
Yep.
then, the
And-
Ore House.
Yep.
The Ore House.
So-
Which has been resuscitated and revived
Yep.
in another location. We'll get to that in the
Still in
second half.
Malate.
Yeah.
Still
Don't
in
worry.
Malate.
We'll get to that in the second half of the program. We're all about out of time
Yeah.
for now, but stay with us. We'll be back with more
I'll see you in a
of
minute.
Ben Razon and photojournalist.